Okay, so we're here today about the heart chakra. This is the fourth chakra. This is what some people say is the biggest energy center in our body. And it's significant because it's at the center of our body. If we hold our arms out and we stand, our body makes a cross. And there really is a cross of demands of the heart where we are channeling in spiritual energy. We are connecting in with earth energy through our body. And then on a horizontal plane, we have relationships with the outer physical world. And then on an inner plane, we have relationship with ourselves. So these are the different dimensionalities of the heart. And that's where I realized there's so much to talk about. Our relationship with spirit, our relationship with our body, our relationship with others, our relationship with ourselves, that I'm not going to be able to go into all of them. So today I'm really focusing more on the relationship with the self. Yeah. And the relationship with the self, I think, is foundational because, especially as an adult, in our early development, we're learning who we are, both through our spiritual relationship and our relationship with nature, but also through relationships with others. Our relationship to ourself often gets formed and shaped and internalized by the way we were loved by others. And so as an adult, I think the relationship to the self-love, the self relationship is the most important thing to work on first. It's really hard to have healthy, balanced, life-giving relationships with other people if we don't have that inward towards ourselves. If inside ourselves we are self-loathing, self-hating, really critical on ourselves, if we're really judgmental, we have a lot of expectations and pressure and perfectionism and all of these things that we do to ourselves, that often overflows into our outer relationships. And so if we can really cleanse and clear and purify our relationship to ourselves, it's going to bleed over into our relationships in the outer world. And while I have to emphasize relationships are two people, at least two people or more, you changing yourself will not always change the other person, but it will change your relationship to that person. So just a lot of power in the relationship with the self. And part of that relationship with the self is the relationship with spirit and the body too, right? So it is more of the vertical channel that I'm focusing on today. When we get into the horizontal channel, which is like us in the outer world, the physical world, relationships with everything in the living world, it gets very complicated. The relationship with the body and the spirit is actually quite simple at its core, but it is our outer relationship with the physical world that often programs us in ways that makes us have dysfunctionality or disconnection with spirit and our body. So they're all connected. They're not like separate entities and energies, and they inform each other. But like I said, spirit has always told me the foundational thing to work on is the self-love, the self-relationship first. And just a little bit of background about myself, which I know you guys know me, but for those who might come in or watch this that don't know me, I'm a psychic and I'm a medium, and I had a lot of early childhood experiences with spirit, with those who have passed over on the other side, who are earthbound, also shadow figures and angels. So I had a variety of experiences with energies that were non-physical. And in my adulthood, I've developed my gift of mediumship, and I've given hundreds of mediumship readings. And the one lesson, the one message that's consistent in every single mediumship connection with our loved ones on the other side is that they want us to heal our hearts. They want us to let go of all of the unresolved, all of the things that we need to redeem and reconcile within ourselves so that we can be free. And that's the heart chakra is the liberating chakra, really. It's the mediator between the spiritual chakras that are up above and the more physical chakras, which are below it. And when we work on ourselves, we're working with all the chakras simultaneously. The heart chakra is the balancer. It's the harmonizer. If you think about the organs that are behind the heart chakra, which is in the chest, like right here, we have our lungs, we have our heart, we have our thymus. All of these automatically regulate and keep rhythm in our body, right? The heart is sending the blood to our body to nourish it, to give it oxygen and give it everything it needs to be alive. The lungs are breathing and bringing life force and oxygen into the body in conjunction with the heart, and the thymus is regulating our hormones and our physiology. So all of this is automatic. All of this is happening on its own, and all of it is very powerful. This is a very huge electromagnetic field that derives from our heart chakra. And in a lot of ancient scriptures, they talk about the heart chakra as the seat of the soul. Some people say it's the third eye. I really feel like it's more of the heart. It's more of the divine feminine seat of the soul is in the heart. And the heart chakra is a feminine chakra. They alternate. So it's yin energy. It's dynamic, it's flexible, it's fluid, it's intuitive, it's emotional. It has all of the feminine qualities to it. The element of the heart chakra is air. So it has an intelligence of its own. And some people say that, like, a lot of scientists study the brain and say, oh, thoughts are derived from the brain. But from the spiritual perspective, our body is just the vessel, the vehicle, like a computer, that the higher consciousness, like the internet, uses to relay information. So our heart is supposedly the main regulator and integrator of information. So even before the mind. So our mind is kind of secondary and automatic, but as we do our inner work and as we cultivate mindfulness and mastery of our mind and really listen to our thoughts and our beliefs and are aware of the collective energies and all of the conditionings and things that we have assimilated into our field, we get to start to parse it out, and we get to start to have consciousness enough where the automatic default of the mind to come up with thoughts and judgments and evaluations of our outer world is mediated by the heart, because the heart is non-judgmental, it's non-evaluative, while the mind is constantly has its own form of intuition, right? It uses intuition from data collection. It's basically assimilating things that have happened in the past and making predictions and trying to avoid painful things, hurtful things, and all of that. And so in conjunction with the heart, the mind can begin to create protective barriers around the heart, which is called the heart wall. So there is integration of the mind and the heart that needs to happen in order for healing to happen. And so the first step is gaining awareness of what is living in my field, what is living in my heart. Is there stuff, residual residue there that needs to be cleaned up? The residue that's there is usually through relational traumas. There are actually body and physical type of traumas that can happen in our heart chakra, but they're more existential, right? Like if you had, I've seen this with people who had really traumatic experiences where, like, let's say they're just walking down a street and all of a sudden someone attacks them and steals stuff and almost takes their life from them. And all of a sudden they have a schema and a belief system. The world's not a safe place. The world is full of love. It's full of hate. And they have a paradigm emerge from that living event that the body consciousness, it's really a body consciousness decision. That is a layer of heart wall that can go up. So we have to pay attention to what is our paradigm around love. And like I said, there's different dimensionalities. Our paradigm of love with ourselves, our paradigm of love with our bodies, our paradigm of love with the world and others, our paradigm of love with the divine, the spiritual dimension. And I've had people have a crisis of faith, which can create a spiritual kind of paradigm that blocks our heart energy. So there's different layers, but mostly what I've seen in the spirit world, connecting with spirit on the other side, the things that they're resolving and healing when they pass over and leave the physical body is unresolved relational hurts, emotional pain. So that's usually where most of the energy in the heart wall comes from. And that includes feelings like grief, resentment, denial, guilt, self-hatred, shame, all of these really, really deep, heavy energies. The thing that comes to my mind, if you've ever heard of the mythology in Egypt, where the heart is weighed on a scale at the time of death. And if your heart is lighter than a feather, you transcend into a spiritual, blissful place. And if your heart is heavier than a feather, then you have work to do. You go to the darker place where you have to process stuff. And that's very much true from my experience of communicating with spirit, is that on the other side, they they make a lot of effort to connect with the living people that they've left behind to try to resolve the things that they were not able to resolve in life. And so as we do healing on ourselves, we actually liberate the connections we have with other people that are unresolved. So that's why I think self-healing is probably the best first step, because as we liberate ourselves from hurtful connections to past people, places, and situations, unhealthy paradigms and beliefs and schemas that we have made up from life experience or even past life experiences, once we start to sort that stuff out, we have a really clean, pure place then to work on all the other levels. So the main frequency of the heart is love. No surprise there. And the ultimate spiritual truth is that love is all that there is, if you've ever heard that. So the heart chakra is the portal to divine love, to the unconditional divine love that is pure and the source from which we all come from and all return to. And it's not something that we only receive when we die. It's accessible. It's a portal. It's accessible in the here and the now. And you can remember times in your life when you were in awe and wonder in a blissful place, in a state where you may have felt that unconditional love frequency. People who have near-death experiences experience this. People who have encounters with their loved ones may experience that frequency as their loved one comes close to them. Contact with angels, like there's certain experiences that bring that frequency in, and it has a very special quality to it. It is very big and expansive. Like I get chills just talking about it. When I'm doing healing work with people and we connect into like an ultimate spiritual truth for them or an angel or a loved one of theirs, it's the energy in the room raises and the frequency is there and you can feel it. And there's this expansiveness. And when you're in a mystical state yourself, how that's felt is like there's a deep knowing that happens, a download that happens, that we're connected with everything. And I've had these breakthrough moments with myself, and so I can explain it from that perspective, but there's really no words that really describe the true essence of that feeling. It is ineffable in a lot of ways. It's larger than life. It's not like any experiences here in the physical world. It is greater than, right? It's bigger than us. We feel like we've made contact with something numinous and bigger than us. And that quality gives us a felt learning of the fact that like I'm merging and blending with everything around me. I feel that and they feel me. This paradigm of unity with all, unity with self, unity, like a boundary of pertness kind of dissolves and goes. The second quality of that is that everything is perfect. There's a state of perfection that's felt. It's like there's divine timing. There is divine order when you're in that state and you feel it and you know it. Now, so that's when we're fully in the spiritual state. When we move into like the full human experience, we feel separate, we feel individual, we feel like there's just chaos, right? Very contrasting experiences. And so the heart is the mediator between those realities. It's the portal between those realities. It's integrating and assimilating these two very different opposing realities together and making sense of it. But the thing about the heart chakra is that it has its own intuitive higher perspectives, but it is influenced by the body consciousness and by the mind consciousness. So when we work on the heart chakra, we're working on different dimensions, and we can really, like, if you do deep inner shadow work on the heart chakra and you ask deeper questions about why there's a felt sense of numbing or guardedness or separation or a lost sense of vitality or loneliness, or these things that we feel when our heart is shutting down. When we ask the questions of that, we're going to be brought up to times and places and spaces where we felt hurt, where we felt misunderstood, where we felt a lack of compassion from others, right? where we weren't getting love in dark times. And the body consciousness and the mind consciousness makes meaning of that automatically. So healing is nailing the automatic realities that were assumed by the body, the mind, heart, and then choosing the truth of the heart. But the heart knows the truth, and knows the ultimate truth, that we are all united, that we're one, and that we're loved, that there really isn't anything else than that. That is the ultimate truth. And so when it comes to healing the heart chakra and opening the heart chakra, it's about reattuning to that spiritual union state, reattuning to that divine unconditional love. And as you reattune to that time and time and time again, it starts to shift the paradigms of the mind and the body. So the paradigms of the mind that shut down the heart chakra or close it up, try to protect it, are that, that of fear consciousness, believing that we're not safe, believing that we need to be protected, believing that if we open ourselves up, we'll be hurt again. That there's this false assumption in the paradigm of the mind, if that we have a full open heart chakra and we live like a child, just like, yay, blissful and arrogant through the darkness of the world, that we're going to be hurt and we're going to be trampled on. And so it closes it down. But it's a false paradigm, because when we close it down, we actually cut off the positive nourishment of the positive experiences. We're protecting ourselves from hurt, but we're also blocking off our ability to receive abundance, to receive love, to receive bliss and joy and expansion and creativity and all the really great, juicy energies that love brings. So there's a balance here. It's like, how do we protect ourselves from real life things that hurts and stay open and receive love in a way where we can function and flourish and thrive? Now, this is where like spiritual scriptures around the world talk about the importance of opening the heart regardless of the fear, regardless of the doubt, regardless of the pain, regardless of all that the mind wants to say. And that when you really, really open the heart chakra, it's the predominant magnetizer. So your life experiences begin to shift. Your outer world begins to shift. I know you guys have probably been in states of flow in your life where like you're feeling like you're humming and you're on cloud 9 and synchronicities are showing up and things are coming to you easily. And you're just in the state where it's just like heaven on earth. And then there's other times where it feels very different. And that's when we're really open. We're open to life experience. We're open, we're flexible, we're resilient to change. When our mind convinces our heart that it needs to protect itself from hurt by shutting down, it ultimately creates suffering. It creates a paradigm of continual suffering and attracting of suffering because we're not letting in the light anymore. So it's actually a false paradigm. And then the false paradigm of the body. So if the body goes through experiences, and the body is very much about safety, right? The mind is about safety too, but the body is like a somatic experience of safety. If the body's been through things, it may create paradigms that the world's not safe, that I'm not safe, that people aren't safe, that love isn't safe. All of these beliefs in consciousness that shuts down the body, shuts down the heart, it inevitably does the same thing. It shuts off the flow of all the good that's there for us, all the good that's there for us at the ready. So it's been in my experience and my journey and what I've witnessed in other people who seem to have a really good balance with being open and also not just gullible and naive and like trampled on, is a well use of all the chakras. When we get up to the higher chakras, specifically the next one, the throat chakra, we're going to talk a lot about this, which is communicating boundaries. Like we get to create the conditions on certain levels that we exist in. We get to set up the scenarios and the circumstances that best support us. If we communicate it, if we use our solar plexus and we use our power that we have, our creative force, our sacral chakra in the world to create those circumstances. And yes, there are bigger forces that are outside of our control that can happen to us. But when we're using all of our chakras to create the ideal circumstances for us to thrive, because that's really our responsibility to do, we're a lot more resilient to the bigger things that are outside of our control. We're a lot more in tune and aligned and know what to do from the guidance of the heart in that situation. The guidance of the heart knows the highest good decisions. It knows what you really want on a soul level, what would be best for others in the situation. And that's not something that you can really hear when you have a paradigm of the world isn't safe or a body isn't safe, because then it filters your thinking, it filters your decision making through that narrow, constricted, fear-based portal. And so really the work of healing is to get back into the heart space, open up, and use our voice, use our creative source, our power, our vision, and all of these other chakras to create the circumstance where we thrive. And then we know we're doing everything we can to be as open as we can possibly be in life, approaching life from the truth of our heart and our soul and our wisdom that knows what it's here to do and who we are. Where I'm not going to go today, which is probably the topic that has the most information that we could create 100 years of content on, which is why I believe our soul chooses to go through lifetimes and lifetimes of experience to learn, is relational love, which is usually conditional, and all that conditional love does to our energy body. And again, the nature of being a human is that in childhood, we're in a very receptive place where our defaults of what love is learn through how people loved us. And most people are humans. They're not perfect. They love us conditionally. And we learn to love ourselves in that way. And so part of healing that is to really become aware of what is love? Like asking the questions like, what does love mean to me? What did I see growing up that showed me what love is? What isn't love from what I've seen growing up? And then also kind of, that's the human side. And then juxtapositioning that with your spiritual experiences and your spiritual truth is like, what is my spiritual experiences show me love is? You know, what are the belief systems there? And then it's about really reconciling them. And there's a middle ground. There's a middle path between the two. It's like, it's all real. Both are true. And then it's really about, okay, this is where you use your chakras in a very conscious way. It's like, what do I choose to believe moving forward in my life? What is my belief system? Not what you learned, but what are you choosing to move from? And that's where your power is. And like I said, the best way to kind of reconcile the spiritual and the human experiences is to continually reattune to the spiritual experience, because the human experience is easy. We're in it a lot. What we need is more of the spiritual experience. And as we create space in our lives where we're equally experiencing both, we start to have balance in a way that is ineffable, but felt. And what that looks like when things are balanced in that way is moment to moment, having the burst of presence and love come in even the most mundane moments, being able to access that awe and wonder in small amounts throughout the day, being able to attune to that frequency of unconditional love, where there's an acceptance of people and circumstances and situations as it is, without needing to control it, without needing to manipulate it, without needing to change it. There's an acceptance of it. Now, when it comes to circumstances in our life where we need to create control and change things for it to better suit us, it's a little different, because when we're in relationship with another human, all we can do is request things. We can't make somebody do something. There are people out there that control people through force, through fear, through really unhealthy ways. But ultimately, each of those people do have a choice. They don't have to listen to that, even if it means death. They could say no, but we don't, because our body consciousness takes over. It wants to survive above all else. A person who's really living from the heart space is going to do what's true for them regardless of what threat there is. And when you read stories like this, right, where someone sacrifices themselves to save a group of people, or to do things that are so courageous and so brave and so against what most of us would do because we just want to merely survive, we feel the heart opening just hearing those stories, because we know that, like, at the core, that's what we really want to be doing, but we're not doing it because we're in a survival consciousness. And so, again, it's about attuning to both of these and then getting a middle way between them. And so today, the meditation that we're going to be doing is a number of different processes that I have learned and also spontaneously experienced for myself. That is something you can go back to time and time and time again. So this is what I like to call the healing, an inner healing temple. And I see it in the heart space. So I do this in my hypnosis clients too, especially if they've had a lot of trauma and they just have an overall paradigm of not feeling safe. One of the best things you could do for those people is to create a safe place within themselves that they can go to, even if it's just their imagination. It makes a huge difference. So we're going to do a meditation where we go to what I call the inner temple, the sacred temple in the heart. And the sacred temple is representative of, like, your sacred body, your temple of your body that houses the soul, houses your consciousness. And it shows up like an actual temple. People see all kinds of amazing things. Sometimes they see like a crystal cave. Sometimes they see a castle made of glass. Sometimes people see clouds and golden gates. You know, like, everyone sees something different, but it's a holy, sacred place that is yours, that is your safe sanctuary. So we're going to go in there. You're going to see what that looks like for you. And then we're going to actually converse and recall experiences with the heart chakra, where we can actually have a visceral experience of how we can actually cultivate an open heart chakra merely through visualization and through our intention. And that's one of the biggest things that I talk about in all of these chakra videos, is that when it comes to opening our psychic senses, opening our chakras, really becoming the full potential of ourselves, it's mere visualization and intention to do so does that in real time. So just visualizing and conversing with the heart begins an engagement, begins an opening. Some of the questions I'm going to ask are about what the heart needs, if there is a heart wall for you, what that looks like, and what your heart recommends you do in your living life to begin to release those walls. Because we can't force the heart to drop the walls. Again, that's just not the nature of love, right? In the heart chakra, we don't force, we don't manipulate, we don't control. The heart is doing what it feels like is most necessary to protect you. So we need to have a conversation and understand and engage understanding of the heart about why that's there. What does it need to begin to dissolve that and cultivate positive experiences so that it feels safe enough to let the walls down. So I can say that, like, if your life has been more fraught with suffering and pain, especially emotional pain, it's going to be hard to take down the wall. So the best way to begin to take down that wall, let's say your scale is, you've had a lot of heavy, let's do human side, a lot of heavy experiences. And so your scales are tipped this way. The way to get the scales even is to pour in more experiences that are positive, that are full of love, compassion, gratitude, appreciation, those types of experiences, enough to where the scales are even. So it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes intention, and it takes practice. But I want to say, if you've had 60 years of pain, it's not going to take 60 years of positive experience. That's the positive thing about the heart chakra and love, that it's very, very powerful. If you did an hour of like love, open heart chakra experiences every day for 6 months, you could totally be even already. It just depends. It depends on where you're at and how much you really get into that feeling of love and expansion within yourself. Sometimes when you read about spiritual experiences that took people from one state of consciousness to another in like a split second, because they were very, very filled with that unconditional love, and it just transformed someone in an instant. It could be instantaneous. The shift could be instantaneous. It can shift the paradigms of the mind and the body and open the heart all at once. So it doesn't have to take the same amount of time it's taken to develop all that heaviness. That's the power that you have in your hands to begin to heal. And if you come from a lot of heaviness and you come from a lot of pain and you start to do this intentional heart healing, you'll start to feel things that are uncomfortable, usually at first. And I like to say that that's a symptom of being back in touch with yourself, especially if the heart wall has separated you from yourself, which is what we're talking about today, our self relationship. If your heart wall has really blocked you from feeling the depth of the pain, feeling the depth of the grief or the loss, or accepting the changes that you've had to endure, then when the heart wall comes down, that needs to be digested and integrated and processed. And the most sacred way you can do that is the sacred space in the heart temple, where you have your angelic guides and your spirit guides, and you have God or source or whatever you believe in, infusing you while you're processing it. It'll be happening more quickly. It'll happen more easily and seamlessly, in a way that supports you deeply. Otherwise, like let's say there's a person who's going through spontaneous awakening experiences and they're not cultivating a conscious relationship with opening the heart. It's just happening to them. Most likely they'll go through periods of grief. They'll go through periods of remembering betrayal. They'll go through periods of pain as the heart wall is disintegrating or dissolving. They'll be experiencing those things over again in a way that is very confusing. It's like, why am I feeling this way all of a sudden? Or maybe even their outer world is reflecting those experiences again and again until they can start to dissolve it and release it. It's a lot better if you have a controlled sacred space where you're doing this work, because you're just going to support yourself. You're going to support your body. You're going to support your mind. You're going to support your heart through it, to be gentle. It doesn't have to be abrupt. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to include reliving all the pain. It doesn't. But as the walls diminish, that energy has to go somewhere. It's going to digest and flow through your system. So what that might look like is, like, I think about an experience that I had after visiting Sedona, Arizona. I was just so full of gratitude. I was with my 2-year-old son. He's just super adorable. He almost choked on a huge rock when I was driving out of Sedona. He was holding this big rock. He's like, asked me if he can hold it in the car. And I said, oh, that's big enough. You're not going to choke on it, right? Because at 2 years old, he's eating everything. I got in the driver's seat, buckled up, and I heard, and I turned around. He had swallowed a huge rock. I was like in full panic mode. I got out of the car. I got him out of his car seat, which took forever. He's like turning blue, and I'm smacking him on the back, and I just reach into his throat and grab the rock out. We both cried. And so I had this amazing spiritual experience at Sedona, and then we had this literal near-death experience with my son. And that night when I was laying down, I was just so grateful that he's alive and that he's safe. And I had tears of gratitude rolling down my eyes as I was doing my nightly Reiki practice. And I had this amazing spiritual experience where every loved one I've ever known that's passed away, and even people that I didn't know very well, came to me and talked to me about me and healing and all this stuff. And it was really, really amazing. I felt like the next day I was a different person. I was a lot more committed to developing my mediumship. I realized how valuable it was. I realized how important the message of the spirits of our loved ones are, which is to heal in the now so that we can live freely in joy and bliss and love now, and not pass over and look back and be like, God, we just blocked ourselves from so much love and so much joy and so much awesome life experiences because we were afraid. We doubted ourselves. We didn't trust things, and it just infused me with confidence that I am on the right path. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I had like 30 people in spirit going, yeah, go do it. You know what I mean? And I was a different person the next day. And the fact that my son almost died, I was just like, I need to create a life that's going to support him to flourish. I want him to be free of all of the hurt, like this heavy, heavy, heavy scale that I have. He has an advantage because I'm doing everything I can to try to mitigate that the scales right for him, to give him more opportunity to live from the heart in a safe way. So it was very transformational for me. And after that experience, I kept having these breakthrough moments just through mundane tasks, doing the dishes, picking up dog poop in the yard. I mean, like, I'm doing mundane things and I have this breakthrough of like the wisdom of my heart calling me to do something. Like the heart voice got louder and louder and louder because I was listening to it. I was honoring the truth of my heart. It was asking me to be brave and do things that otherwise I wouldn't be motivated to do. And I also learned that when we don't listen to the heart wisdom, the soul, and we're actually living against ourselves when we don't listen to it, more pain and suffering is created. For me, I'm a physical empath. I'm a physical medium. It's like, so I experience things physically. So when I'm not listening to the wisdom of my heart, when I'm not listening to my guidance, I start to physically get sick. And I looked back at my life and I went, oh my gosh, there are certain circumstances that really stand out when I got really, really sick. And it forced me into a corner where I had to make the choice that my heart had been telling me to do forever. And it was like, spirit was just like, when are you going to start listening to us? When are you going to start doing what we say so you don't have to like go down that path, like get forced into this decision that we know is best for you? Like, we're giving you a heads up, giving you an advantage. So that's the benefit of doing the work of opening the heart chakra as you cultivate daily meditation, or maybe it's even like something that you just love to do. Maybe you love knitting, maybe you love gardening, maybe you love painting, whatever it is. When you're in that space and you're in joy and you're in love and you're in gratitude and you're feeling that fulfillment that the soul feels when it's doing something that it just takes pleasure in, you are slowly, incrementally opening that up. The voice gets louder and louder, and you live more in alignment with your true self because of that. So that's what I see as self-love. It's doing the hard part, which is the healing part, and committing to it so that you can create a life of more ease. So we're not living against ourselves. We're not abandoning ourselves. We're processing life in the real moment. And part of that I think is the hardest for our society specifically is allowing ourselves to feel our feelings, feel the loss, feel the grief, feel those things, and then let it go. So this is where I see the biggest thing that contributes to heart walls is we are not letting go of those things. Another story, while I was doing therapy every week for like 4 years, which was so valuable, with a very spiritual shamanic woman who honored my spiritual side. We were healing heart stuff, and I was in my heart temple and I was like, oh, there's a treasure chest in the corner. And I was like, I was excited. And I opened the treasure chest and I hear, this is where all of your past hurt and wounding and pain is kept. And I was like, what? I was like, why on earth would I like put it in such a beautiful treasure chest, like in my heart space? And my guides were like, because some part of you feels like if you let it go, you'll forget, and then you'll allow people to hurt you again. And I was like, oh my God. And that is so true for so many of us. That's that mind body consciousness kind of like hanging in there. Like, if we let this go, you'll forget all the wisdom. You'll forget the red flags. You're going to let people walk on you. You're going to be naive but it's not true. So I had this conversation with my guides, with my angel, my higher self at that time, where I was like, we had to convince the heart that letting this go was not going to reset me to be the fool, right? The beginner of the spiritual journey. But it was actually going to liberate me to be more like the priestess, right? The more empowered self who has had the experience, has learned it, and let go of the hurts. Like, letting go of the hurt doesn't mean you forget the wisdom. My heart was not understanding that, or some part of me was holding on to that. And it was hard, you guys. I still probably have some of this in the treasure chest in there. It's hard because that's how I survived my childhood. I kept a tally of all the things that people had done to me and was like, if I see that in someone, I'm running the other way. I don't even want to begin a relationship with someone who does these things. And so I was collecting this junk in my heart chakra. It's very interesting to see what's there and how you're actually managing and coping, right? Our heart chakra is trying to integrate and like reconcile all of these different opposite things. Everyone's energy does it a little differently. So when we go in the meditation, we go to the temple, notice what it looks like, notice what it feels like. Is it familiar? Is it new? Notice what's in there. And then we're going to actually have a conversation with the heart as if it's like its own entity, because it is. Like the truth is that our chakras are different portals of ourselves. They're different layers of ourselves. And then our organs, which are associated with each of these chakras, are different energies and entities all by themselves, or like different universes. So you can literally talk to the heart, and see what it says and listen. It might be very quiet. It might be very hard to hear. Just do the best you can to listen to it. And I highly, 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 highly recommend that you listen to what it tells you. Don't ignore it. That always does harm than good. So we'll be doing that. And then part of that meditation, after we connect with the heart and we really hear what's going on with it, and we see how we're like handling the hurts and pains of our past, I'm going to read like a kind of affirmation type script thing that I wrote. And then have us recall memories of love. So I want to like get your juices flowing before we go into the meditation. So I'm going to talk about what kind of prompts I'm going to say. So I'm going to ask your heart to reveal to you a time when you feel like you were at your best, like you were in the flow, in alignment, when you were listening to your heart, when your heart was open. Recall a time when you were there, to remember, a time when you were there. So we bring that remembrance into the here and now. The thing about the spiritual dimension is there's no time. So if we recall sometime when we were in alignment, we actually begin to attune to that and begin to get in alignment just by recalling that memory. Also, a time when I love the dog's little teeth. A time when you recall being filled with just immense bliss and joy or gratitude. Like the example for me is holding my son outside of my body after he was born. It was just like the shining miracle baby. It was like, oh my God, my body made this. It was just like, oh my gosh, so many feelings, right? Like in that moment. I can go to that anytime. The night where I was in Sedona, right, where I was so grateful that my son was alive and safe and that we had this beautiful day together. And then all of the realization that I have like this huge team of spirit that wants the best for me and what that feels like. I can get back into that. Ooh, I have chills. I can get back into that feeling by just recalling that memory. So I'm going to ask you to remember times when you were filled with love, with gratitude, with joy, bliss. Maybe it's a spiritual experience for you. Maybe it's something mundane. It's like every night when I snuggle with my dogs, I'm just in that space, like whatever it is for you. Okay. Can you guys think of something off the top of your head? Something else might come up when you're in the meditative space, but yes. Okay, good. I just don't want you to be like in the meditation, be like, I don't know. And then feel stuck. I don't want you to feel that way. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna stop the recording.